Great. Well, hi everyone. Thank you all for joining me and the rest of us today at the CanNAwhat, CanNAthis 420 event with the Open Road. I'm Mel Babbitts, your host and founder CEO of the Open Road Bar in Pittsburgh, PA. I'm very excited to share all of this wonderful knowledge from our great guest panels today. So the Open Road is an all non-alcoholic bottle shop and pop-up bar in Pittsburgh. And yeah, everything we carry is fully non-alcoholic. The products and the brands that we're going to be talking about today here in front of me are all of the non-THC versions of Roots Brewing, CERIA Brewing, and the CBD infused sweet Crude. So just disclaimer, I'm located in Pennsylvania, so is Sam Cap and several of our viewers. This is a medical marijuana only state, and I would appreciate if everyone just keeps that in mind during this event. Yeah, so I'll run through who our panelists are today real quick, and then give you a few minutes for each of you to introduce yourselves, and then we'll get on. So our great panel today, we have Keith Villa from CERIA Brewing, Kevin Barnes from Roots Brewing, Talia Bennick from the Sweet Crude, and Sam Cap from the MMJ Advocate Doc. So Keith, would you like to introduce yourself first?
Sure. We have 5 minutes.
Sure.
Okay.
Doesn't have to be 5 minutes. It can if you want.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'm Keith Villa. I'm the founder and head brewer for CERIA Brewing Company. I've been a professional brewer for since 1986. A home brewer since 1982. I have a PhD in brewing from the University of Brussels. So I went there with my wife, lived there for a few years, got my doctorate, came back and convinced Coors Brewing Company to give me funding to start Blue Moon Brewing Company. I did that in 1995 and then grew it to become the biggest craft brand in the United States and in the world, and then retired. And then my wife and I started a company to actually bring cannabis to the masses in a socially acceptable format. So we started CERIA Brewing Company. CERIA is the name of the campus in Belgium where I got my doctorate. It's a French acronym, stands for the Center for Teaching and Research in the Food Industries. It's a French-speaking campus where they actually have the brewing school, the chocolate making school, the culinary arts school, and all those food type industries. We launched our cannabis beer in 2018 in Colorado. We're still in the Colorado market. In 2019, we decided to expand into the non-alcoholic, non-infused space because we had to make non-alcoholic beer anyway because you cannot sell THC in a product with alcohol. You can't combine alcohol and THC. It's illegal. So we were making it anyway, and we decided to pivot and enter the NA market. So we launched our NA products in 2020. So currently we are in, I forgot how many states, 30, maybe 36 states, and Puerto Rico. Also, I believe direct to consumer in Canada. And we're test marketing our products in Europe right now. And then for cannabis, we're still in Colorado. We should be entering the California market soon. We hope in the next month or two. Let's see what else. I think that's it. But we're having a lot of fun with it. We're a family-run organization. My wife is the CEO, so she's in charge of CERIA Brewing Company, and both the NA side and the infused side, which is rare because in the world of cannabis and the world of brewing, almost all the CEOs are male. So for her to head it up is pretty rare, but she's pretty smart. She's a professional engineer by formal education, and she retired when I did to start CERIA. Our daughter also works for us, Catherine. She handles the cannabis side. But we have a small team of folks who work for CERIA Brewing Company, and we're just having fun with it and watching it grow. So hopefully that's enough, and I'll hand it off to the next person.
Thank you so much. Kevin, would you like to introduce yourself next?
Absolutely. Thank you, Keith. I was actually born the year Keith started homebrewing, so I got a little catching up to do, but I'm doing my best. I've been making beer for 13 years now in San Diego. So sorry, I'm the head brewer for Two Roots. I started brewing in San Diego at Green Flash and helped them grow to a national brand. And then 2017, I got a call from a cannabis company who wanted to make non-alcoholic beer in order to infuse it with THC. As Keith said, you can't mix alcohol and THC. So non-alcoholic IPA actually had been something I used to daydream about when I worked at Green Flash. And that would be pretty cool to be able to drink IPA all day and stay sober. And so, yeah, I really just jumped at the chance at getting into this, burgeoning industry. And so we launched in 2018 in Nevada, our Two Roots infused beers. We were in California for a minute, but we had some hurdles. And so we kind of paused, looking for a partner to bring that back online later this year. But again, like Keith said, we're already making non-alcoholic beer. People love the taste of it, and it made sense to go to market with the uninfused non-alcoholic beer. So we did that in 2019. We are in about a dozen states currently. We have product in Korea, shipment going to Australia. Beer just landed in the UK, so pretty far spread, and bringing more states online all the time as well. And of course, we have the direct-to-consumer e-commerce on our website, and we've got 3 main products, NA beers, and then we've got a handful of seasonals, one-off special releases that you can only get from our website. So we're having a ton of fun, and it's really just crazy to watch the demand for these products just really skyrocket, the excitement, and see all the other types of beverages that are out there that I get to enjoy too. So thank you, Mel, for having me at this event.
Totally. Thanks for joining.
Yeah.
Talia, would you like to introduce yourself and Sweet Crude next?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name's Talia. I'm the founder of Sweet Crude. We craft ready-to-sip cocktails that are 1, non-alcoholic, 2, tastefully enhanced with hemp extract and natural botanical terpenes. We had our first production at the end of last year, so we're definitely the newest brand here today. But what we launched was Mellow Mule, which is our take on a Moscow Mule with pineapple express terpenes, and then OG Tonic, which is kind of like a non-alcoholic gin and tonic with lime OG terpenes. And personally, how did I get started in this area? Well, I stopped drinking alcohol in my 20s. I started suffering from really excruciating migraines, and alcohol was a big trigger for them. And so there were years where I would, have to kind of juggle. Do I want to, in a social setting, do I want to go out and drink just to feel like I'm part of the party? Or do I want to hold a club soda and not feel, too great about my beverage decision? And so while I still feel pain-free, however. And so I started mixing zero-proof cocktails at home and got really interested in how to create a very full-bodied, sophisticated sipping experience that also created an occasion for relaxation. And that's how, both CBD and terpenes came into play. And I'm really excited to be part of this group today. Thanks so much for inviting me, Mel.
Thank you for joining us. And Sam, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, definitely. And of course, thanks so much to Mel and the Open Road Bar and Bottle Shop for having me and everyone today. This is a really exciting collaboration of worlds, which I am excited to sort of discuss. I'm Sam Kapp. I am a 9-year cannabis professional here in the state of Pennsylvania. 9 years sounds like a long time for Pennsylvania, which it is, because for about 7 years, I managed glass shops in Philadelphia. A glass shop is like a quote unquote head shop. We don't want to use any slang terms here today. And so I'll use the proper term, which is a glass shop. It's where you would buy your water pipes, vaporizers, papers, etc. That's where I launched my cannabis career. And for the past 1.5 or 2 years, I've now been the assistant and scheduler for the MMJ Advocate Doc, which is a certifying doctor's office practice here in Pennsylvania. So we certify and recertify patients for their medical marijuana cards here. I've also been an activist of cannabis for over a decade and working with NORML and various other organizations to help create cannabis change here in the state of Pennsylvania. I also run a podcast called Sam We Are, where one of our main themes of discussion is cannabis. We also had Mel as a guest about 10 episodes back discussing non-alcoholic craft beers.
Thank you so much for that great introduction. So to set the tone for the rest of our event, before we get into talking about the amazing drinks that we have here, we're going to have Sam talk to us more about Pennsylvania's medical marijuana program, how to apply for it, what qualifies in it, what's available in Pennsylvania legally for medical patients, and how to find products that work for you. So Sam, would you like to tell us some more about the MMJ Advocate Doc?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Mel. Yeah, the MMJ Advocate Doc is a telehealth certifying doctor's practice here in Pennsylvania. Like I said, I'm the assistant and scheduler for the the founder, who is Dr. Jennifer Minkovich. And there's a lot of folks always want to know, how do you become a patient in the program? There's a couple of steps that you would need to do to apply before you can be scheduled. So your first step is you would create a user account on the PA MMJ website. Then you provide documentation to someone like me. Then you have your doctor's appointment. You pay a state fee, and then you get to be happy dispensing. You're right off the dispensary. It's a pretty easy process. I think a lot of folks get a bit overwhelmed, thinking that it's going to be sort of a confusing process, and it is. The language on the government website is horrible, and it makes no sense whatsoever. But once you get past the confusing language on the website and you're able to work with someone like myself and walk you through the process, it's really simple. There are 23 qualifying conditions here in PA. To name a few: anxiety, PTSD, cancer, HIV, chronic pain, seizures, opioid use disorder, etc. What surprises a lot of folks is that children of any age could be certified here in the state of PA. Not all doctors' practices do certifications for children, and that's their prerogative. But you can certify a child for any of the qualifying diagnoses here in Pennsylvania. And I'm sure we all know that there are, so many benefits that folks of any age can gain from medical marijuana use. When children are certified, of course, they have to have a caregiver. And so a caregiver would be most likely a parent or someone who takes care of the child, who would be going to the dispensary for the child. The child would not be entering the dispensary, nor would they have a card of their own. They would be entering, the caregiver would be entering the dispensary for the child. And that process takes about a month for someone to become certified as a caregiver. It's a bit more complicated actually to become a caregiver than it would to get your own medical card. For a caregiver card, you have to go through a background process that requires fingerprinting and FBI clearances so that there's nothing shady going on. And that takes about a month. And of course, you know, we get patients of all walks of life. We have, you know, grandmothers, children, former soldiers, detectives, folks of every age, gender, background. I recommend, if you do decide to become a patient, if you're here in Pennsylvania, if you're in another medical state, probably the same thing that they would have there as well. At the dispensaries, there's going to be a pharmacist on staff. And I suggest the first time you go to the dispensary to ask for a consultation, which is going to be free on your first time entering the dispensary. And speak with the pharmacist about which ailments you're trying to treat and how you're trying to do it. And they will be able to give you very specific targeted product recommendations. And in general, I just recommend go slow, try new products at home, and never forget that you can always do more, but you can never do less. It's a general rule of thumb with everything. At the dispensary, you're going to have a lot of options for how to consume your cannabis. Of course, there's going to be flower. I'm not really going to discuss that because I'm sure we're all familiar with what that is, looks like, and how to consume that. Though here in Pennsylvania, you can only vape your cannabis, you cannot smoke it. We also have concentrates, which you may know as oil, dabs, shatter, BHO. There's a lot of different names for it. They may sound like slang, but those are actually all cannabis legal terms. And concentrates are extracted concentrated THC, which most concentrates contain around 80% THC, compared to your flower, which most folks are used to consuming, which has around 15 to 20% THC. When you're consuming flower, there's a lot of other materials that you're inhaling that you don't necessarily need to be consuming and inhaling. With concentrates, you do a dab, and not the dance, although that dance was derived from the dabbing community. But you vape this a bit differently than flower. You can use an electronic dab rig like a Puffco Peak, or you can use a rig, which is a water pipe with a special nail head instead of a flower bowl and a torch. Just make sure, however you're vaping your cannabis, that you're cleaning your pipes, vapes, and rigs often. These need to be cleaned at minimum once a week for light use and 2 to 3 times a week for heavy use. Sounds silly, but this will help save money on your products, help them last longer, give you better flavor profiles and a cleaner experience. Besides the types that you can inhale, there's also a bunch of products that's available that you don't have to inhale. We have topicals, which I've personally just discovered and I'm totally in love with. We have a wonderful brand, Dr. Solomon's lotion. It's a transdermal lotion. They make a couple different products, but the favored one amongst most folks seems to be the 1-to-1 CBD to THC. What's different about the transdermal lotion than your typical THC or CBD lotions is that this one is transdermal, and so it really does break the blood barrier and goes below the dermal layer to get into your body. And it really does work very well. We have what are called edibles, but they're not what most folks would think of when we hear the word edibles. These are not food edibles like brownies, but we have other consumables that you would be able to eat, like tinctures, tablets, and RSO. Tinctures are, you can put them into a beverage. You can put them right under your tongue for a sublingual option as well. RSO is Rick Simpson oil, and a lot of folks will place that right onto food to consume it. So you could sort of take a little drop of that, put it on anything you want, like a cookie, and intake it that way. The RSO is very good for anxiety, physical pain relief, insomnia, etc. One of my favorite products is a THC tampon. I can't see everyone's face, but I feel like there's some shocked faces in the crowd. I don't know. It's a THC tampon. We've probably heard of them before. They're technically called suppositories, which is not as sexy a name, I know, which is why I called it a tampon. Also not a sexy name. But the suppositories or tampons are made by Hanging Gardens brand, and they're one of my favorite products. It's a THC suppository or tampon that can be used vaginally or anally. for menstrual cramp relief or stomach disorder relief, like for folks with IBS or IBD, which would include Crohn's and colitis. So those are just really unique products that we wouldn't often think of when we think of marijuana, cannabis, or the legal industry here. I'm going to talk a tiny bit about terpenes. I know we have some terpene experts on the panel, so I will not get into too much about that, as we will get into it later as well. But most—
Can I pause you real quick?
Please.
You are just on a roll. I was going to ask you all these questions and you just answered them before I could even ask you them. But a quick note back to when you were talking about what Pennsylvania considers edibles versus what many of us may think of as edibles. So we are going to be talking with some of the THC beverage brands today. They also make non-infused versions of their beverages, which is what I have here. But those would also fall under things that we may think of as edibles that Pennsylvania does not agree with us about. So we don't have any of these THC infused beers available in Pennsylvania, or anything in that category. But I also wanted to jump back to when you were talking about topicals, and just a note on that, because I love them and they are pretty much the only thing that works for my chronic pain. It's really incredible. So definitely recommend that category of things for people who have similar issues.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love to hear that it's working for folks, especially that sort of topical product, or the products, again, that we wouldn't often think of when we hear cannabis, because that's where you're really, in my opinion, going to gain the most medical benefit, is from those sort of products that we don't think of, the tampons, the lotions, the tablets and tinctures, just the things that our mind doesn't often go to, that can really be targeted for specific pain relief.
Absolutely. And so now, can you tell us about what might we talk about in that first meeting when we're talking to the pharmacist at the dispensary, and how would we find products that really work for whatever brings us to the dispensary?
Yeah, it's a great question. You know, a lot of folks are coming in for a multitude of reasons. You know, maybe it's anxiety for the most part, and maybe it's also chronic pain, right? So myself, for example, those two apply. And so I'm going to be using different products for different relief. So when you're going in to talk to the pharmacist, even if you were, you know, here in Pennsylvania, you can only be certified under one diagnosis. Even if you have 10 diagnoses, that would qualify you. And so, you know, you want to let them know anything you think that you would be wanting to use it for. You know, if I'm using it for stomach pain relief or anxiety or, you know, chronic pain relief, you're going to have different products that will help you. And so really just let them know everything that you are looking to gain from it, how you've used it in the past, even if you've used it, you know, not legally in the past here in Pennsylvania, you know, they're not going to kick you out of the store. So let them know how you've used it, you know, in your life and how it's benefited you. And that'll help them make recommendations for you.
And so then if we're at the store and we're faced with this wonderful menu with so many choices, how do we even start with that?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, you know, a lot of folks have, you know, we've heard of like sativa, hybrid, indica, right? The problem with that is these have no genetic or scientific significance. This means nothing chemically. They're based on anecdotal reports, which I know is like hard to hear, but it's true. And so you really want to look more at the terpene profiles that are listed on the labels, which will kind of give you a better idea of which compounds are going to benefit you. So I'll launch into like a little spiel, and then I'll let Mel ask another question. I won't go too far, but you know, when I'm talking about these compounds and these terpenes, you know, there's other folks that will talk about terpenes, but you know, they're different compounds within cannabis. We've heard of THC, we've heard of CBD. We understand that these are two compounds that are commonly known within cannabis, but there's also other compounds like THCA, CBN, CBC, CBG. And when these all work together and compound together, they create what's known as the entourage effect. And this is when these unique effects are created from the presence of these various compounds. I know that was like a long spiel, but what that means is, you know, look at the label, look at the terpene profile, look at the CBG, CBN, profiles, and think about how those are all going to affect you. Try them. And I recommend keeping like a little log of how things are affecting you when you try them, Okay, I tried the Cresco butter and it made me feel XYZ, and it had these profiles, these terpene profiles. And it'll help you sort of more pinpoint how things are really making you feel and which compounds are going to work best for the relief that you're trying to get.
Thank you for that very comprehensive explanation of what it's like to get into being a medical marijuana patient, at least here in Pennsylvania.
Hey, Mel, I just
Yes.
wanted to chime in really quickly.
Please.
I'm not sure what the laws are in Pennsylvania regarding medical marijuana, but in some states, actually most states, even though you do have legal medical marijuana, it still is illegal on a federal basis. And so Pennsylvania, I know there are quite a few veterans and quite a few hunters in the state, and some are surprised when they apply for their medical license and then they go to apply for a hunting license and they're denied it. So I would just chime in to say, if you're doing something that the federal government or the state government oversees, such as firearms, or I'm a private pilot, so if you have your private pilot's license, again, you could get in trouble because the federal government oversees a lot of that, and if they see that you're taking something that's federally illegal, they'll step in. So just a word of warning for the hunters and private pilots in Pennsylvania. But
Yes.
you probably know the laws better than me for your state.
I do know that you cannot have a medical marijuana card and a firearm license at the same time, the same name. So thank you so much for that. That is an important piece of knowledge for people. And we're joined by two kitties.
Yeah, and also don't forget that every state is different, like Keith was saying. And so, if you're in Colorado, those medical laws in Colorado are vastly different than what we have here in Pennsylvania. The Pennsylvania program is quite new. We've only had it for about 4 years. And so our reform with the program is ever changing and slow going. But every state is different with those laws regarding firearms. And a lot of states that have had cannabis for longer than we have been trying to make those reforms that you've been discussing, Keith, to balance that equity issue of, folks having a legal medical card and also, wanting to do things like fly a plane or own a firearm. And so hopefully there will be more change coming and we'll be allowed to do all of the things that we want to do.
Great. So the next thing that I would like to talk about is we're going to move into a section about biology, and that's going to include human biology, plant biology, and how they interact. So to start, Sam sort of got into this a little bit, but we're going to talk about what the endocannabinoid system is, what that means for us, and learn some more about what cannabinoids are common and that we might hear about more often, and also what they might do and just how it all interacts for the body and how they help us. So Sam, can you tell us a little bit more about the endocannabinoid system, what it is, and if you can talk about some of the most common cannabinoids, which I know you mentioned a little bit before, but if we can get into a little bit more about.
Yeah, all mammals, humans included, have endocannabinoid receptors. Say that 5 times fast and I will give you $1. I'm surprised I got it right on the first try because it always messes with my tongue. But all mammals do have these receptors, which is why we have products like CBD and THC treats for pets with anxiety. We see our dogs and cats having anxiety when we go away or go to work for the day. And we notice that folks are able to benefit their pet's anxiety with CBD and THC. Yeah, like that cat right there that Mel's holding.
Yes, he's very old and he takes his daily CBD.
That's so wonderful. I didn't actually know that cat took CBD, so that's great. I love to hear that.
It's for his joints.
And it really can give a wonderful benefit. Yeah, I think I did ramble on about the THC, THCA, these different compounds, and those are going to be part of the compounds. And then you're also going to be able to find those different terpene compounds. So let's see if I pronounce all of these right. So you're going to find terpene compounds within cannabis like myrcene, which is found in other foods as well, like fruits. So mango, for example, I believe has myrcene in it. You'll also find, let's say, limonene, which is like found in like lemon or citrus fruit. And so these not only give the cannabis, their lovely flavors, but also they have these unique experiences. For example, like myrcene, I think it's going to make you it's a sedative type of terpene. Limonene is going to be a bit of a more up. You're going to feel a little bit more energetic when you're consuming something with that in it. And again, so all of these, when they're working together, they create this thing called the entourage effect, which is nothing to do with the TV show. And it again means that they're working together to create these sort of like unique experiences, which is why a lot of times folks will say, oh, I tried a sativa once and I didn't enjoy it. And what does that mean? Where did you try it from? What were the compounds? What did you consume? If you weren't looking at the terpene profiles, you really have no idea what you were consuming. And so it is really important to look at that and understand how each one is interacting with another to make you feel a certain way. And every person's different, so what makes me feel energetic might make you feel anxious. And so it's always good to just take note of how you as a person are feeling whenever you're consuming a specific type of new product.
I want to rewind a little bit. We will definitely be talking about terpenes a little bit more in a few minutes, but back to cannabinoids. So on, at least as far as our packaging goes, usually for new products, you'll find the cannabinoid content list and you'll find the terpene content list. So the most commonly known cannabinoids are THC, CBD, but we also have and hear about THCV, THCA, CBG, CBN, and there's a whole bunch more. But those ones, at least personally, I come across the most. I think they get a lot of attention. And those are all of the cannabinoids, all of the endocannabinoid system is something that humans and I think it's mammals have. So these are all natural things that work in our physiology. Is it CBN is best for sleep, right? And CBG, I think, is best for inflammation, right?
You think? Yeah, I think so. I think those are all good for inflammation too, when you look them up. All the CBCs, CBNs, CBGY, XYZ, I don't know, they all have like anti-inflammatory properties, which I think cannabis does in general. But yeah, I mean, it's very interesting when you start to really understand and break down, what the cannabis is that you're consuming. I think it's a really fascinating experience for folks to go on a journey of how does this make them feel. Like I mentioned, a lot of people say they've tried sativa and they haven't enjoyed it. That's one that I hear so often from new patients is, no, I've tried sativa. Everything else makes me tired, but sativa makes me anxious, or it makes me feel this, or it makes me feel that. And I say, well, have you tried it from the dispensaries? Have you tried it this way? Have you tried it that way? And so, really thinking about, again, ignoring any of the stuff that you've ever tried from the street, not thinking about that, or whatever someone told you the name was or the strain was, it doesn't count. It doesn't count. It was a whisper down the lane situation, my friends. You don't know what you had. As far as strain is concerned, obviously you had cannabis, not to imply anything else, but you don't know exactly what strain you had. And so you really just ignore all of your previous experience. And when you're in a legal or medicinal state, take the time to get to learn what works for you in different ways. I'll consume during the daytime and use something that'll make me energetic. But then at nighttime, obviously, I want to unwind and I'll give myself something that'll help me with my insomnia. And those are going to be two totally different products. I wouldn't use my one that helps with insomnia during the daytime and vice versa. And so just really thinking about the different ways that you're going to react to everything. And really, like I said, try it at home, go slow. You can always do more, but you can never do less. So try a little bit. And then you can always continue to build that up and try a little bit more the next time if you feel like, I felt it, but I could feel more. Try a little bit more the next time.
something that I've learned through my research is, for example, that Dr. Solomon's lotion you were talking about earlier, they make an all THC one, they make a THC CBD 1-to-1. I don't think they make a just CBD one, but other brands do. And so I was wondering what would make me choose one over the other of those? How do I even choose one? And from my research, I've found that CBD generally helps with inflammation, and THC helps with pain and like that nerve reception versus the inflammation. And so together you get both of those effects. But if you had just one or just the other, it might lean towards helping in one way versus the other.
That's right. Yeah. And really the combination, like we're talking about with the entourage effect, really that combination of the THC, the 1-to-1 or whatever, ratios you're getting, that's what's going to help potentiate one another. And so they're really going to maximize the benefit from one another as you're using them together, which sounds like doesn't make any sense. But, when you do start to consume, and all of these folks are going to continue to talk about CBD here today, but when you do consume CBD, when you're mixing it with a low dose THC, you can get a whole new range of medical benefits than anything that you've ever been able to try before. Like that 1-to-1 lotion that's transdermal. And like I said, that does seem to be the favored one as opposed to the straight THC one or the straight CBD ones. For example, with the my favorite product, the THC tampons, I saw like everyone just put their cameras off when I said that. I'm just kidding. But yeah, with the THC tampons, you'd think, oh, pain relief, we're going to go the CBD route only. But a lot of research studies in recent years have showed that for menstrual pain relief, you really want to go the route of THC.
Because it's treating the pain receptors.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And you want it to be targeted. You want to use a THC tampon. You want to use something that's going to be inserted into the vagina so that it's going to give you that targeted pain relief in the specific area that you want it to be relieving your pain at.
Yep. So this leads me into a question, not just for Sam, but I'm going to open this up a bit about for CBD products. We see often things labeled as CBD isolate or full spectrum CBD. And what does that mean for people who don't know? But in short, the full spectrum means that it has that entourage effect and it has multiple cannabinoids in it versus the isolate is just the CBD. Keith, would you like to give us some more information about that?
Sure. Yeah. So full spectrum. Yeah, it's a complete extract of the cannabis plant. For Pennsylvania, it would be the industrial hemp plant. And then you can also extract it so you don't have any THC at all. Because with full spectrum, that's pretty much everything extracted from the plant, including terpenes. But there will be a little bit of THC in there. By law, the plant has to have less than 0.3% by weight. But if you extract it, you can end up with extracts that have more than that. And so that's why you want to watch out to see which type of extract you have. In general, like Sam says, you do want just a little bit of THC to help with the entourage effect on the body, because it is a very natural reaction. One thing Sam said that's very true is it is natural. All of us, and mammals too, pets, cats, dogs, all have what are called CB receptors, CB1 and CB2. And these are part of the endocannabinoid system that's in our bodies, which we all have. And as Mel opened up this session, she was talking about that, the endocannabinoid system. And a lot of you may not have heard of that, but because it's very new, it was actually discovered in the 1980s and 1990s. So it's very, very new. A lot of doctors aren't familiar with it, but it's very, very new. And what people found was that we have these receptors, and there's CB1, which are generally in the brain, and then CB2, which are all over the body. And they actually are like keyholes. And what happens is you have the cannabinoids that go in like a key, and then they go in and they make a connection, and then they cause certain reactions. THC gives you a high, and a lot of the other cannabinoids do things like pain relief, or they are anti-inflammatory. anti-nausea, all kinds of things that they do. So it's really it's a complex system, but it's very natural. And I should also say that endocannabinoids is critical to understand, because that means we also make them in our bodies. We make cannabinoids in our bodies called endocannabinoids. The first one that was found and identified is called anandamide. It's one that makes us feel good. So if you do yoga, then all that stretching that you do and everything, it really, it's thought to pump out the endocannabinoid called anandamide, which is naturally produced in our bodies. And plants like cannabis produce these things. They're called phytocannabinoids. They mimic the ones that we produce. And so there's this natural interplay in our bodies. And that's why what Sam said is so critical, because we want to make sure that our lives are better through decreasing pain, decreasing inflammation by using phytocannabinoids from the cannabis plant to help in our everyday lives.
That is so interesting. Are there other cannabinoids that are produced internally for us?
Oh yeah, there's a whole bunch, but
Cool.
not all of them have been identified. There are some that naturally relieve pain, because when you think about it, there are things that happen, such as childbirth, where it's very, very painful. And however, after a woman gives birth, the pain goes away very quickly due to a number of actions. And one of them is thought to be the production of endocannabinoids, which relieve pain quickly, because that's a very traumatic experience. And the pain, as soon as the baby is put on the woman's arms, the pain almost immediately goes away from childbirth. And again, it's thought to be the result of endocannabinoids being produced that make that pain just go away quickly. And there's also some reports of almost like superhuman activity, where you see a mother whose kid might be stuck under a car or something, and the woman, maybe with another person, is able to move the car to free the kid. These almost miraculous type of stories that you hear. And those are from endocannabinoids. Again, it's thought to be endocannabinoids that give you this almost superhuman amount of strength. And there are some phytocannabinoids that mimic that too, such as THCV. That one gives you energy, and it also helps you decrease your appetite. So THCV is this, some people refer to it as the skinny cannabinoid, because it makes you less hungry and it increases your energy so you can go running and everything. So yeah, there's a lot of them that we produce in our bodies and that are mimicked in the cannabis plant. And in the future, we're going to have, I know we're going to have an area where people can go in to their favorite cannabis shop and buy cannabinoids to help with certain experiences and help with certain pains. And so the future, I think, is wide open. It's going to be a fantastic future for people to actually feel much better every day of their lives.
Absolutely. Definitely looking forward to more research coming and more products being able to be developed that do focus on specific cannabinoids and specific terpenes, and really targeting the desired results of use. So there was one thing that you mentioned during that, and you mentioned that for Pennsylvania full spectrum products, they're going to be coming from the industrial hemp plant, which is different from the cannabis plant. And I would love if we can talk a little bit about those two different plants, what comes from those plants, what we should know about them, and what we should know about them as far as our products go. Ready?
I can jump in real quick and then I can hand it off. But the only reason is because I just wrote a book on cannabis. So yeah, the plants are referred to as cannabis, and the government made a definition of hemp, which is actually cannabis that has less than 0.3% THC by dry weight. So anything below 0.3% is referred to as hemp. Anything above 0.3 is referred to as marijuana. but it's all called cannabis. And so, yeah, that's the distinction between the two plants. But they're all, scientifically, they're all cannabis sativa L. And so I think a lot of us have heard of that, cannabis sativa L. And they're just different varieties of it. So yes, yeah, scientifically, it's the same plant with just little variations. And I cover that in my book too. But anyway, that's the differentiation between the plants. 0.3% is that magic number, and really it's a number that was literally it was chosen by this researcher in Sweden years ago who didn't mean it to be the magic number. He just said, let's just kind of throw a number out there to see based on what we're kind of seeing between hemp and marijuana, and it just happened to be around 0.3%. But some countries in the world use 0.1, some use 0.3, some use more. But it's there's really no magic about it. It's just a delineator by law, so governments can have some way to control marijuana versus hemp. I'll let someone else talk.
Do you know if the for non-alcoholic products in the U.S., which is defined by the U.S. as less than 0.5% alcohol by volume, is that also kind of a semi-arbitrarily chosen number?
In a way, yes, because they say that at 0.5% or less, nobody can get drunk. But there are people who lack the enzyme to break down alcohol. It's called alcohol dehydrogenase. You may have run into some friends who have a little sip of alcohol and all of a sudden they get flushed and they get tipsy just from a little bit of alcohol. They can get drunk on 0.5% beer. So it's not, again, it's one of those delineators that was put in place to give the government an area to control. So 0.5% and less is really a level that most people shouldn't get drunk and shouldn't have an effect. And in fact, a lot of people don't realize that overripe fruits also have a small amount of alcohol. If you have an overripe banana, that has alcohol in it. Overripe apples. And so that's why that 0.5%, it's small enough that it's not going to make most people drunk, but it will have an effect on some. And that's why you'll find some religions and some people who don't want even that trace of alcohol. They want 0.0. And I know our products at CERIA are 0.0. Our label says less than 0.5, but they're truly 0.0. And that's because some of our customers, they've said that they don't want even a trace of alcohol. So that's why we go through great lengths to make ours 0.0.
Excellent. And I am definitely excited to talk more about the beer side of all of this with both Keith and Kevin from Two Roots in just a little bit. And we are going to learn so much about beer and brewing and dealcoholization and what that even has to do with cannabis. But before we get there, I would like to go back to a few minutes ago. We were talking about terpenes. I've had a lot of people ask me questions about terpenes. We have a few products here today that do specifically talk about that. We have Two Roots Straight Drank Terpene Infused IPA. But we also have Sweet Crude's CBD beverages that are terpene-forward, ready-to-sip cocktails. And so I would love if Talia from the Sweet Crude could tell us a little bit more about terpenes, what they're doing in these drinks, why do we want them there, and what do they add to it?
Sure. So fundamentally, terpenes, Sam gave a great overview of them, but at a basic explanation, they're aromatic botanicals. So, it's a plant compound, but you know them as aromatic botanicals. So for example, if we enjoy lavender and we smell some lavender and it's calming to us, those are the terpenes in lavender that are telling our brain, okay, this is really relaxing. Linalool specifically in lavender. And cannabis has a ton of really great terpenes in the plant as well. And I actually first started learning about them years ago at a first visit to a dispensary in Colorado. And the bud tender was, showing me different flower, and I was smelling it. And I had never understood how different strains could smell. And that was the first piece of education for me, and what made me really interested in the cannabis plant, that differentiation of how terpenes changed different strains so much. And then I began to learn how they impact your body as well, and open up different occasions for relaxation. And so when I was crafting zero proof cocktails, the use occasion for sipping on a zero proof cocktail is certainly one of relaxation, kind of enjoying as you sit, maybe on a couch or as you're cooking dinner that night, whatever it may be. And the pairing of terpenes, these botanicals, is really useful to entertain or invite you into these occasions for relaxation. And so we have some of the terpenes from our hemp extract, but also different botanicals that we are using and as ingredients to create these different profiles in our drinks. So for example, with OG tonic, we have lime OG terpenes, and that is kind of like, I would say, if you're taking a forest bath, if you're walking through a forest, you get some of that cerebral, sort of heady, uplifting reset that you might have on a hike. That's a little bit of what we're offering with OG tonic. Whereas with Mellow Mule, we have Pineapple Express terpenes, and Sam had mentioned myrcene. Myrcene is very apparent and available in a Pineapple Express strain, along with others like pinene. Not to get too scientific, but that's exactly right. Sedative, it's more of like a happy chill that you might have. And what I find so interesting is not only can they add to really robust flavor profiles, so creating really sippable, delicious drinks, but they also can tap into this mind-body connection to help you relax.
So thank you. That was a wonderful explanation. So Lime OG and Pineapple Express are two strains, and the strains have generally a certain terpene profile that go with them. And so the Lime OG generally has, you said, definitely pinene, has all of that like piney earthiness, the humulene, right?
There's a little humulene, there's some cymene and carine in there typically. Limonene will be big with Lime OG as well. And when you order, like, part of our customer experience is we want to sort of help you understand what terpenes you might find. So you get like a little terpene guide, and with each drink you see which individual terpenes, at least the most prominent ones, are in our cocktails, and how they might make you feel.
Chart that you sent out. I think it's really educational. I think that through your Instagram page, there's also more information about the terpenes and terpenes that are used, and also just more information about what those are. So I think that your page and your brand are a good resource for that, for people who are curious.
Laura on here knows I've self-proclaimed I'm the terpene queen. I love terpenes.
I love that. And so the terpenes that are used in your drinks, are they sourced from the hemp plants that you're using for the CBD extract? Do they come from somewhere else? Or are they coming from other natural sources that aren't necessarily from hemp cannabis?
Yeah, so the broad spectrum hemp extract that we use certainly still has some terpenes in it. So you're getting a bit of those hemp notes in there, but we are building on those with different plant extracts. So for example, with OG tonic, we mentioned limonene. We're using things like Persian lime in there and Siberian fir needle to just continue building up those tasting notes.
Excellent. Yeah, I only came across learning about terpenes recently, mostly through my medical products and just my own internet research. But they are present in so many different places in nature. Like you and Sam, and I think Keith mentioned earlier that, some of these are in certain fruits, some of them are in trees. It's such an interesting direction of science that we've only really started hearing about. And it's very interesting.
And one of the things that Sam could probably talk a little bit about, but I am seeing more and more commonly, is if you do enjoy cannabis flower, also mixing certain herbs within your flower to build out some of those terpene profiles even more. So like I've read like St. John's wort or rose, like some sort of rose element, lavender, things like that. And I find that really interesting and kind of beautiful.
It is. I mean, it's beautiful to look at and it's beautiful to smell, and it's such a different kind of experience to use, and it's a nice direction.
Yeah, and Talia, I don't think I got a chance to mention it. Maybe I did mention it. I don't know. I practiced my spiel today, so who knows when I said it to whom, if I said it to myself. But if you're, I've read studies that say if you're eating a mango while you're consuming cannabis with myrcene. Did I say this? Someone shake their head.
No, that was yesterday.
Okay, I've been talking about this for a few weeks now on the back end. So sorry, y'all. I'm also talking about this a lot all day at work, but so if you're eating a mango while you're consuming cannabis that has a high myrcene profile, it's going to potentiate your cannabis, experience, which is kind of what you were just explaining, Talia, with mixing your, maybe you're mixing St. John's wort, or you're mixing Damian or whatever you're mixing with it, or maybe you're consuming a mango, or maybe you're smelling a lavender tree while you're consuming something that has linalool in it.
One of our products was actually inspired by that mango thing with the myrcene. So we have a mango dango IPA, which uses
just sold out.
Yeah, dang it. Yeah, we just did a special release on the website. It's still available infused with 10 milligrams in Nevada, but we did it for that exact purpose. The myrcene in the mango, it intensifies the cannabis.
Awesome. Kevin, could you tell us some more about straight drink and the terpenes that are infused in there? In our both, that one comes both infused and non-infused.
Absolutely, yeah. So another one that was inspired, by the fact that we're making cannabis infused beers. So we thought, oh, let's make one that purposely, smells and tastes like cannabis. So we used a lot of different hops to try to mimic that and match that. We used a lot of different terpene blends, and what we settled on was 2 hops. One's called Eureka, one's called Comet, and those paired with a couple of botanically derived blends that mimic the Jack Herrera strain and the Northern Light strain, gave us that sort of smell of a fresh flower that we were going for. So it's a little dank, it's a little fruity, it's a little resiny, it's kind of very complex. The interesting thing though, people sometimes ask us when they taste our non-infused, non-alcoholic beers, are you sure this is non-alcoholic? Are you sure this is uninfused? And it's because they're experiencing, those effects from all the terpenes. The thing that's interesting to me is that the effect comes mostly from the terpenes from all of the hops, because we're using such little amounts of botanically derived terpenes and such high amounts of hops that it's mostly myrcene and humulene, and in smaller amounts of the other ones, but that create the effects, even in the straight drink, which has added terpenes.
Which brings me to a very important thing that I'd like to talk about, is the connection biologically between the cannabis plant and hops and beer. So hops and cannabis both come from the same plant family. Don't know how to pronounce it. I'm not going to try, but they come from the same plant family. And that is what makes this also interesting. And that's why the dank category of beer like even makes sense.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, they share a lot of the same terpenes. That's what inspired the name of our company, in fact, Two Roots. The two plants being so similar. I'm sure Keith could go a lot more in depth than me, but
I'll chime in. Yeah, it's the Cannabaceae family, and that's
There it is.
a small family of plants, flowering plants. And the two most famous ones, at least for our talk here, are hops, which are Humulus lupulus, and then cannabis. And they're considered cousins because they come from the same family. And in fact, you can actually graft a cannabis branch onto a hop plant and it'll grow. It won't make cannabis on the hop plant, but it'll grow. And you could do this the reverse. You can graft branches onto cannabis plants and they'll grow. And so they're considered cousins. And like Kevin said, they do produce a lot of the same terpenes. And I know one of the main ones in both plants is myrcene, which has sedative qualities. And in Europe, if you visit any of the hop growing regions, what you'll find is a lot of places you can buy what are called hop pillows. They're these little pillows about the size of a US dollar, and they're stuffed with hop flowers. You can also call them hop cones. And the reason they do that is because myrcene is really rich in hop flowers. And so when you put it under your pillow, you can actually sleep at night because it has sedative qualities. And cannabis, same thing. The myrcene is one of the most prominent terpenes in cannabis. That's why it makes a lot of people kind of drowsy or sleepy. And it's very effective, as are a lot of the other terpenes. But as Kevin said, though, there are a lot of shared terpenes in both plants. And I think the nice part is you can really have them jump out in specific varieties of cannabis or in different dry hopped types of beers. And even there's a variety of beer called a fresh hopped beer, where you use fresh hops, and fresh hops are very rich in myrcene. So that's what you get. You get a almost grassy-like aroma in fresh hopped beers, and those ones are very good at drinking some and relaxing.
yeah, the sedative qualities are pretty intense. A lot of the sleepy time, nighttime teas will have hops in them too.
Evan and Keith, you have a question from Laura here asking if your product offerings are any of them CBD only beers or CBD and THC. I understand that THC helps balance the bottom load or something like that. But for someone who chooses not to ingest alcohol or THC, I'd be curious to know what your product offerings are.
And I
Let
second
Kevin go
Laura's
first.
want for CBD only versions so that I could carry them and share them here.
Yeah, so CBD only non-alcoholic beers are something that we plan to introduce in the future at some point. We're very excited to do that. It's not something we're able to fit in our load at the moment, but it's certainly something we plan to do. So, and then we do have non-beer products in Nevada and right now, and soon in California, that will have CBD and THC. And we will do CBD only versions of those too. Those are going to be like flavored seltzers and mocktails.
And for us, we have one product with both THC and CBD, and the CBD is added there to mellow out the high that you get from the THC. We don't yet have a 100% CBD product. And the main reason for that is because CBD is one of the cannabinoids that scientifically it's been studied, and to get a true effect on the human body, most researchers say that you need, well, there's some who say that it's upwards of around 150 to 200 milligrams of stuff to have a true effect. And most products that you buy in the market only have about 10 or 20, some have 50. But you need a lot. The reason you need a lot is because CBD doesn't bind to the CB1 or CB2 receptors in the body. So it has secondary effects. And because of that, it doesn't provide an effect for everybody. There are some people who take CBD and they say, it doesn't work on me. And others who say, I get drowsy. The reason for that is because it's having these secondary effects. And so that's why there's got to be a lot more studies in science to really nail down, number one, what's happening truly and how many milligrams do you need per pound of body weight to have a true effect on you as a person. So that's why I would be very cautious in having any just CBD products and taking them, because they're not, again, it's not been proven that CBD on its own has an effect at the 10 or 20 milligram level. It could be something else that's having that secondary effect. Things like CBG truly binds to the receptors in your body and has a real effect, a measured effect. CBD does not. And so that's why we'll come out with one when the science is there and we can actually deliver a true product that has the effect that you want. So that's a little bit about CBD.
Thank you for that. I personally didn't know that CBD doesn't bind directly. And so that does reinforce why I've heard, at least, that when you're looking for CBD products, and we talked a little bit earlier about that CBD isolate label versus a CBD full spectrum label, that really reinforces why you would want those full spectrum labeled CBD products, because that gives you more of the entourage effect with more cannabinoids. So if there are no more questions right now about CBD products, we're going to shift gears a little bit into talking about brewing and beer. Well, with CERIA and Roots, they both are breweries of non-alcoholic beer with and without THC, and well, with and without cannabis. But both breweries make their products very differently. So I know that you brew differently, you infuse differently, you de-alcoholize differently. Well, maybe you don't brew differently, but the rest of it is pretty different. And I'm very curious to hear more about that. I don't know who wants to go first. Kevin,
you want
to go first?
Well, okay, I can go first.
Yeah.
So as Kevin and I mentioned earlier, it's illegal to sell a product that contains both alcohol and THC. So if you want to get into the business of providing beers or any beverages with THC or even CBD, you can't have any alcohol. So what most brewers do is make products with less than 0.5% ABV, because that's considered the threshold, the legal threshold for something that's considered alcoholic and non-alcoholic. And there are several ways of making non-alcoholic beer. I wrote an article last year for the New Brewer magazine to actually help craft brewers understand the ways of making non-alcoholic beer. There are mechanical ways, two general mechanical ways that you can do it, and then a couple of biological ways to do it. Most craft breweries use a biological way, meaning they have an arrested fermentation. That means they start the fermentation, but they stop it prematurely before it makes more than 0.5% alcohol. And if it goes above that, they add water to get it down. What we do, we have two processes in CERIA. One is we make a completely alcoholic beer and remove every drop of alcohol out of the beer. And so that's one way. It's a proprietary way because we have a bunch of things we do to make it have, taste great and have full body. We have a second way that we do it, which is a patent pending way. We filed for a patent because it's a truly new and unique way of making non-alcoholic beer where there's zero alcohol. So we have both ways, and I can't talk about that until our patent comes through, but it is a very unique way. So regardless, either way that we use makes 0%, because again, what I said earlier is that we have customers who don't want even a trace of a trace of alcohol. And from our perspective, when it becomes federally legal in the United States, the government may demand that brewers who want to make these type of beers have 0.0% beer versus less than 0.5. So we're at 0.0. And for us, we love the taste of our beer, the body. There's no alcohol, but for us, it's all about the great taste of craft beer with zero alcohol. So that's just short and sweet about CERIA. I'll hand it off to Kevin.
So we've experimented with multiple ways to make beer non-alcoholic as well. The main thing that we do is somewhat similar to CERIA, and we do ferment fully alcoholic beer and then remove the alcohol. So we have a dealcoholization unit that is a vacuum distillation system. It does allow us to make beer at less than 0.5% ABV or 0.0. So we've chosen, in the interest of flavor and mouthfeel, to start with 0.5 or less than 0.5% ABV. But we are working on some other products to address those customers Keith refers to who really just don't want any, and those will be launching later this year. So that's really exciting. But for the most part, our biggest concern was, how do we make it taste, feel, look, smell like the regular, alcoholic beer that people know and love, and have it be legally non-alcoholic. So we do a number of things before and after we de-alk it to get it to where we want it to be, which probably don't need to go into too much in depth here. But the main thing we noticed when we started de-alcoholizing beer was that alcohol is sweet, and it gives kind of a fullness to the palate. And so we worked really hard on how do we replace that, or how do we make the beer come out feeling like it's not missing that after you take it out. So that's something we're really proud of, that we think we figured out.
So I'm sorry, did you say what your secret magic was that makes Two Roots feel so on par with its alcoholic counterpart?
I didn't say, other than we knew we had to mimic that, what was missing, which is that sweet fullness from alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah. So interesting fact about Two Roots is that you also brew alcoholic beer. I didn't know that until the day before we came and visited you at the tap house.
that's right.
I only knew about the NA and the infused. But they also do brew alcoholic beer, which is only available at their tap house. And you do all of the NAs as alcoholic ones, or no?
No.
Okay.
In fact, currently we don't even make any alcoholic beer because due to the pandemic,
Right.
we shut down our tasting room. So, but no, we don't. Even before, we didn't make alcoholic versions of everything. So,
Did you ever, to test out how close to that feeling like it was a full leaded beer, did you ever have people in your tap house and kind of blind test them with say, hey, this is the enough said Hellas and this is the enough said Hellas, which one is NA?
all the time, yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. And I'll be honest, it took a little while till we could get people to second guess. It
Nice.
definitely took some trial and error, but I think they're getting closer and closer. So
Yeah, I definitely hear from people that Two Roots is up there as far as feeling like a leaded beer.
that's awesome.
In the right ways.
Yeah. The only negative is that I hear it's NA, but why so many calories?
Also
So that's the other reason why we're going to work on those 0.0 ABV beers.
Awesome. Definitely looking forward to seeing everything that comes out moving forward from all of your great brands.
Thank you.
But yeah, until the other day, and you mentioned that you're also doing infused seltzers and mixed drinks and, stepping a little away from the beer direction. Do you think we'll see non-infused versions of any of those non-beers?
Definitely.
Cool.
I'm not sure about the seltzer water. That's pretty competitive space.
Mm-hmm.
But certainly the mocktails will have in infused and in non-infused.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. So just to bring it back a little bit, because I have, and I know a handful of people who are watching this have sat on a bunch of other non-alcoholic community events and heard about de-alc methods. So Kevin, you mentioned that with your de-alc machine, it is vacuum distillation, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And Keith, do you also use vacuum distillation or you use reverse osmosis?
No, we use one of our methods, like, as I said earlier, we use two
proprietary
methods. One is a proprietary pending method. The other, we use vacuum distillation with a bunch of proprietary methodologies to make it taste like beer, because it's 0-0. It's tough to make a 0-0 beer taste and smell like beer. So, but we're there, and took some time to develop it. But yeah, it's for us, it's important to be 0-0.
Mm-hmm. And I have to say, Grainwave is one of my favorites. Like I drink it quite often.
Oh, thank you.
So for one or either of you, what made you decide to go with the vacuum distillation over other technology?
At CERIA, I chose that because when I studied brewing in Belgium, they were just working on, this was in the early 90s, they were just doing the research on how to make great tasting NA beers. And once they figured it out, they found out that vacuum distillation makes the most decent tasting non-alcoholic beers. And that's one reason. There are other reasons, but that's one of the main reasons that NA beer has such a high percent of the market, the share of beer sales in Europe, because the beers taste a little bit better. And so when I was there, that's what they were using. So when we started CERIA, that's what we started with, was we said, we're going to start using vacuum distillation with a bunch of other proprietary steps. And but over the years, we've figured out how to do it without that. So yeah, that's what got us into it at first.
Cool.
Yeah, I would say for us, we believed that the best tasting non-alcoholic beers that we had had were made using those vacuum distillation machines too. And I take a lot of influence as a brewer from the German craft, the German way of making beer. So that's definitely the dominant form of making non-alcoholic beer in Germany. And you know, but I kind of like Keith said, you sort of have to figure out your own way to use it. And we've yeah, we think we've done that.
Awesome. So in short, the vacuum distillation gently heats and then allows the alcohol to rise up, and then that way it's able to be removed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And as I said, there are other methods you can use. There's like reverse osmosis, but that uses high pressure filtration to remove the alcohol. And it works, but you can't get down to 0.0. And then there's arrested fermentation, which I talked about. And again, that works to get less than 0.5. You really can't get down to 0.0. And the bad part about that is it leaves a residual sweetness in the beer. And then there are some alternative yeast strains that you can use that don't produce alcohol as long as the sugar profile of the beers is correct. And so those ones are a little tricky because they don't make traditional beer flavor, and they can make alcohol if glucose is present in the beer. So that's why each one has its pros and cons. And for me, that's the good thing, is because as a consumer, and your listeners too, all of them have taste preferences that are, all over the board. Some people love that residual sweetness from arrested fermentation. Some love the taste of beer from vacuum distillation. Some love it from reverse osmosis. And so it's, there's a little bit of something there for everybody. And that's what makes the world of NA so exciting nowadays.
I fully agree. I love that you can really tell with each brand, what their method is and where it's coming from. And it does offer such a wide experience. So for your non-alc beer and your infused beer, how do they get infused? So I know that we can often find cannabis products as drops. We can find them as tinctures. We can find them in so many forms, and sometimes they're water soluble, sometimes they're oil based, sometimes they're alcohol based. It's kind of all over. I've generally read that, for mixing in a drink, you want it to be a water soluble or water based product. Otherwise, like if it's oil based, you do get that oiliness on your drink, and nobody wants that. That's not what the drink is supposed to be, unless it's like a milky drink and then the fat works and holds it in. But none of these are milky drinks. So what can we talk a little bit more about the cannabis infusions that go into your brews? And Talia, if you'd like to talk about the ones that are used in Sweet Crude as well. Yeah, that was a little rambly, but about infusions.
Okay, well, I guess I can start. Yeah, so as Mel said, cannabis in its purest form, that is the cannabinoids, are oil-like substances, and so they won't go into water. They'll float. They just won't go in. It's like mixing salad dressing. If you have vinegar and oil, you put them together and shake them, and they'll kind of get together, but then they'll separate over time, over a short amount of time. The same thing with cannabis. So what you have to do is you have to make it water compatible. A lot of people say water soluble, but talk about water soluble, that's a different thing technically. For example, if you think of table salt is sodium chloride, which I think a lot of people have heard of. And when you have table salt, you have like an ion of chloride and sodium. They're like this. In water, they come apart. And so it becomes water soluble. The cannabis will never break apart and become water soluble. So what you have to try to do is make it water compatible. And so the trick there is to find a way to make it compatible. And what you do is you use what are called emulsifiers. And I think a lot of us have seen an ingredient list on the side of salad dressing or other things that say used as an emulsifier. And what those do is they bring together an oil compound and a liquid compound, and they make it so that the oil goes in and it stays in solution to float to the top. And so with cannabis, you have to figure out how to emulsify the cannabis. And today's technologies really stem from the I think it was the 1980s. I think, well, some of us were alive back then, but in the 1980s, what happened was the Russians and the East Germans had figured out how to provide steroids to their athletes in almost a hidden way. Because back then, the prominent way of getting steroids was you put them in a needle, a hypodermic syringe, and you injected some rear end, and that's how you injected steroids, and you had to do it to get the steroids into the person to improve their athletic performance. But the Russians and the East Germans, what they figured out was if you use vitamin E, it'll act as an emulsifier, and it'll make the steroids almost invisible and fully active in water. And so they would put that into their water bottles. And of course, you'd see the athletes drinking, 10 minutes before a competition to hydrate, supposedly. And they got this artificial advantage of having a steroid boost right before. And so that's why a lot of them were winning until experts figured out how to measure for steroid use. And that's what it really stopped being used. And that technology spilled over into the Western world in pharmaceuticals and eventually into cannabis. And so now you have the same technologies being used to make cannabis water compatible. And so it takes the cannabis molecules, makes them water compatible, and then you put it into beer, water, any type of beverage. And depending on the emulsifier, it's a micro emulsified, it'll take on a milky-like appearance. If it's nano emulsified, those are even smaller particles that become almost invisible, and it looks water soluble. So at CERIA, we use nano emulsions to get it in, because it also helps to become bioavailable. You can actually get that feeling quicker with nano emulsified products. And it doesn't have to go through your whole digestive system. That's the reason edibles usually don't use that type of technology, because you eat them and it goes through the whole system, and it takes anywhere from 30 minutes to 2 hours to feel the effects of an edible. And when you drink drinkables or smoke it, it goes into your system right away, almost immediately with smoke. And with our products, probably 15 minutes to about 25 minutes, you start feeling it. So it's fairly quick, mimics the effect of alcohol, and yeah, it's in your system. So anyway, that's a little bit about what we do at CERIA.
I appreciate you explaining that, Keith. I was going to say we use the East German steroid method, but nobody would have understood what that meant. So I appreciate that. I think that's pretty much how you get it into liquid, is you've got to nano emulsify it. So I'm not sure what type of THC you guys put in. Ours is just an isolate. So it's just pure THC, and any entourage effect that you get is from the terpenes that are already in there from the hops, or in straight drinks case from the botanically derived ones, or in the mango dango case, the myrcene from the mango puree we use. But it is nano emulsified, and it's nice because you can kind of just treat it like any other flavoring you would otherwise put in beer. So for us, we refill a keg where we put the emulsion in the keg, fill the keg, push it back into the tank, and then do that a few more times to make sure you got every little last drop, and then carbonate it up and send it to packaging.
Yeah, and it's the one thing that all of us have to, on the beverage side, have to be very careful of is that if you choose the wrong emulsion, it'll actually stick to the can liner. So
Yeah.
and that's with CBD beverages and THC beverages, because those will have a tendency to stick to the liner. So you may buy a can of CBD water and drink it and have no effect. And one reason could be that all the CBD sticks to the liner of the can, because all aluminum cans have a sprayed on liner to separate the liquid inside from the aluminum. Otherwise, without that liner, your liquid will taste metallic. And so that liner protects it. But that liner acts almost like a glue for cannabinoids, and will stick to it. So you have to make sure that your emulsifier works as almost like a slippery agent to keep it from sticking to the liner. So I think a lot of people have figured that out by using the right emulsifiers. Basically, you pick an emulsifier, and those people who supply the emulsifiers have done a lot of work to get past that. There are some people who are getting into it right now who don't know that, and they're putting products in the market that have a label that says maybe 25 milligrams of CBD, but by the time you buy it, there's nothing because it's all stuck to the liner. So just one thing you have to watch out for is that the availability of the cannabinoids in the beverage.
That's exactly right. And Keith, I feel like you bring it up and explained everything so beautifully. One of the things that, as we develop our products, we're not only just looking for the potency to make sure that the liner hasn't scalped the CBD, but also for homogeneity, to make sure that as you blend your product, that there's as much CBD at the top of the can as there is on the bottom as well. And so as you're developing these products, you're working hand in hand consistently and constantly testing, lab testing your products to make sure that the CBD is both there and potent, or THC, whatever cannabinoids we're using, but that they're also homogeneous throughout the can and stable over a period of time.
Yeah, it's critical. And there are a couple of companies that are at the forefront of emulsions. I'll just name them: Vertosa and Source. They've done a lot of science to really show that their products, they have certain emulsifiers that don't stick to the can liners. And there are some others out there, but those are the two leading ones. And so they provide really good products.
Something that I thought was, all of that was amazingly informational. But something that I had thought of before and never really knew why, with some CBD waters, I've definitely seen, they have that cloudiness, and that has to do with, as you said, the method of the emulsifier of choice, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Whether it's micro or nano.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because with micro emulsions, you can generally use gums and just ultrasonic mixing, and you'll have these micrometer sized. They're called micelles. They're little. They almost look like, if you could picture like a basketball, and on the inside, that's where the oily part would be, and the outside of the basketball is the part that makes it stay in water. And that's what happens with micro emulsions. With gums, they're cloudy because they're bigger. With nano emulsions, they're very, very tiny, and that's what makes them almost invisible when you put them in beverages.
That is very cool and new information for me to answer something that I definitely been wondering about before. I haven't seen the CERIA infused in person or outside of the can, but as far as I know, all of these brands infused products do not have that cloudiness because you're all using that nano emulsion, right?
I believe that's correct. Yeah, you're muted, Keith.
Sorry, thanks, Kevin.
Yeah.
Our grain wave is cloudy because it's unfiltered. So, and I'm sure Kevin probably makes some that are unfiltered there. So yes, it's unfiltered. So what you're seeing is just the unfiltered nature of the beer. So it's a combination of proteins and carbohydrates, a little bit of yeast. It's natural, it's healthy.
Yes.
The infused and the non-infused look the same,
Excellent.
I think is the point you're going for. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And except that on the cans, I know we get a lot of people who are afraid that the non-infused might have THC in it, but you don't ever have to worry about that because this is both grain waves. So this one is the one that you can buy in a store. So it's
the open road.
And you can see the color difference. Our infused is dark blue. It's got the THC warning right here. It has a child-proof end, so it's makes it very hard for anybody to open. I mean, even me. So it's child-proof. And then our other one is a lighter blue. It's different logos, kind of larger logo there, smaller there. Again, dark blue on the infused one, and then the regular one with no cannabis has a regular opening top. There's almost no way to confuse them, and you can only get this in a dispensary. It's illegal for any retailer to sell this. You have to go to a dispensary. You have to show your ID to buy it. Whereas this, you can buy it anywhere online. You can buy it at your favorite retailer. So yeah, don't ever worry that you'll get confused between the non-cannabis one and the cannabis one. Same with Kevin's. I know those have child-proof ends with cannabis, just regular ends with, that's the Can Plus end. So that's another thing is there's several types of child-proof ends. It's called the EXO slider end, and he has the Can Plus. They're both effective at keeping them out of the hands of children.
Yeah, in Las Vegas and Nevada, we have the same EXO tops that Keith showed there. But it's very clearly labeled differently, clear cannabis warning, and then saying that you can't possibly buy the infused ones on accident. You have to go to a dispensary. You have to show your ID. So.
Yes.
Hey, Mel,
Yes.
Jack had a question here saying sometimes on the cans of infused drinks, they ask you to lightly shake it. And I don't know, I think, Jack, you're likely asking, is that because to make sure that the cannabinoids are dispersed throughout the can or not? I don't know the answer to that. To me, it might make more sense that there are certain other ingredients like juices or things like that need to be shaken up a little bit, but y'all might have an opinion on that.
Well, I'd agree with you, Talia, that there's probably something else there that needs to be resuspended in the liquid, because for the most part, if you have to shake it to get the cannabinoids off the liner, sometimes that's not going to work, because once they're on that liner, you need either alcohol or another type of solvent to take it off the liner. So just shaking is generally not going to do it. It might do it if you have the right type of emulsifier in there and it's maybe just partly adhered to the liner, but yeah, I would think that they're doing it to resuspend some of the other ingredients in the drink.
Yeah, generally the cannabinoids wouldn't just kind of settle on the side; they'd actually be bound to it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would probably lean towards what Talia said, and it's probably whatever else is in the drink. Personally, it's always a good idea to just, turn your can upside down for a second before you open it.
Carefully if it's carbonated.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Slowly. So both CERIA and Two Roots started as cannabis companies first, correct?
correct?
Yes.
And so from that, how have you seen that the popularity of your uninfused products is as what you expected coming from being a cannabis company? Is your the popularity of your non-infused products surpassing your expectation? I don't know. What does it sound like for you?
From my perspective, when I first started this project in 2017, there wasn't a clear trend toward non-alcoholic beer that at least people in the brewing industry or people in the cannabis industry had, to my knowledge, caught wind of yet.
Right.
And so it wasn't until a year later when we first started having people taste our non-alcoholic beer, and we got such good feedback, and then we started noticing, there's kind of a trend happening here with non-alcoholic and sober curiosity and dry January, and we started noticing all of those things, and that's when we realized, actually, we might be onto something here that has nothing to do with cannabis, other than, a lot of people will pair our uninfused stuff with other types of cannabis products. So we have seen our, demand and excitement for the uninfused ones outpace the infused ones, but I don't think we were surprised by that, partly just because there seemed to be an organic excitement about it, and I think even more so just the availability of where you can purchase these things. I mean, and the lack of hindrance and roadblocks that you have in cannabis, where, as Keith mentioned earlier, you have to produce it in the state you're going to sell it. So you have to have a different production facility for any any state. So the ease of production and the ease of retailing of the uninfused stuff is what, why I guess we expected that to sort of take off like it has.
Yeah, and for us, we started as a cannabis company, and it wasn't too long before people tasted our cannabis beers and they really loved the flavor, but there were quite a few who were either first responders, truck drivers, military, and they said they were tested for drugs, and there's no way they would risk their livelihood for a can of cannabis beer, but they loved the taste. And so they asked if we could provide it without the infusion. So we said, sure, since we already make it anyway that way. So that was really the kind of the thing that kickstarted our venture into the non-alcoholic world. And then, similar to Kevin, the sheer availability of NA non-infused, you can buy it anywhere. You can get it online. You can buy it at your local liquor store, grocery store, wherever. And so just the availability grow to the point where it just really took off. So NA is really a big part of the market right now for us. Cannabis is still big, but it's tough because you can only do it state by state. You can't cross lines with anything with cannabis to sell. And when it's federally legal, again, who knows what the rules will be as far as suppliers and how you can make it and sell it. So we'll see what happens then, but we're hopeful it'll become federally legal within the next few years, 2 to 3 years.
I think a lot of us are.
No doubt.
Do you still see yourself or CERIA as a cannabis first company?
Well, it's in our DNA. We are, that's the way we started. And in fact, when we branched off into NA, if you look at our logo, try to get it without any glare, but if you look at the logo, the profile is Ceres.
I never noticed.
She's the Roman goddess of agriculture. And if you look at her, because that's also where we get the name CERIA, is from Ceres, the Roman goddess of agriculture. She's also the reason you call cereal because of Ceres. But if you look at her laurel, it's a laurel of hop cones and cannabis leaves. And so we left it there because that's how we got our start. And so we'll just keep it there. But yeah, it reminds us of our roots in cannabis. And as cannabis becomes legal in more states, we'll venture off into those states. But the world is really great for us. And yeah, for us, since CERIA only makes NA beer, we don't make anything with alcohol. It's a natural that we stay in the NA world and the cannabis world. And like Kevin said, NA is just growing like crazy right now. It's wherever you look, the numbers, it's anywhere from 38% growth, and pretty healthy growth. For some individual companies, it's more than that. So that's why it's really important to stay focused on, at least for us at CERIA, focused on the NA world, because cannabis for us is part of that. And in the future, once the rules get sorted out with what's allowed, what's not allowed, what the dosage really should be for CBD, then we'll get into that market where we can provide products that truly have an effect on people who want a desired outcome, for pain relief, for inflammation, or relaxed, whatever it is. We want to make sure we deliver so that when they have a can of CERIA, it's either for refreshment of non-alcoholic beer or for an individual effect.
Yeah, likewise for us, we definitely consider, ourselves a cannabis company, and that's part of our DNA. And same, our logo, you can see it is a hop leaf with the roots are an upside down marijuana leaf there. So we kept that. And I should say too, I didn't specify this before when you're asking about our alcoholic products, but in the future, they won't be branded to Roots.
Mm.
So we did acquire the production brewery in Michigan, and we'll likely rebrand all of our alcoholic beers with their name.
Okay.
Which they're getting a new name too, so I don't even know what it'll be yet. But yeah, we'll keep those distinctions. Keith has a great point about the issue with having the same brand in cannabis and alcohol. So we're wary of that, certainly.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a big point in the future, because when it does become federally legal, I do think the U.S. is going to use Canada as kind of a benchmark, and they won't allow the use of alcoholic trademarks and brands with cannabis. Because if you look in the California market right now, you certainly see like Pabst Blue Ribbon. Yeah. They have a THC seltzer. Mm-hmm. And there's no way that would be allowed in Canada. And I think when we see federal legalization, I don't think that's going to be allowed. And
that's a good point. Lagunitas too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Lagunitas too, exactly. And so that's one reason we created CERIA with no alcoholic equivalent. It's always been, CERIA always has been and always will be zero alcohol, so that we just stay in that arena, and that's our sandbox, and we'll just keep playing in it.
Makes sense.
Connor asked, what about Sweet Crude? Where do we see yourself in relation to cannabis? Connor, for us, we're a terpene-forward, zero-proof cocktail, terpene-forward, non-alcoholic cocktail. And that really is what defines the flavor profile of our drinks. We will be producing a line extension that does not have CBD in it as well, but they will still be terpene forward. And so when I look at our brand, it's terpene first, terpene forward.
I think that that's really cool. And I definitely look forward to seeing your line extension, both with and without CBD infusion. But I think just giving terpenes that new perspective of that they don't necessarily have to be in an intoxicating product is a really cool direction to take it.
It really is a cool thing, because terpenes, or if you go into dispensaries, a lot of them will refer to them, they'll shorten it to terps.
Mhm.
But terpenes and terpenoids are really effective. And that's kind of the whole reason that aromatherapy came about. And
Right.
they really, they're effective. There's a lot of research showing that terpenes really work to relax you, to, to do all kinds of things. And they're effective on the body. It's funny because a lot of the early research was done with mice in controlled little environments where they would just flood the environment with limonene or mercy, whatever. And look at the poor little mice and rats and see the effect. And but a lot of that research was carried forward and used to apply and make products for the cannabis industry. So, and the bottom line is it does work.
They're generally positive effects too. So the mice probably were, they were feeling all right about it.
They went to sleep with a smile. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
On that note,
On the note of happy mice,
Yeah. Mighty Mouse.
Mighty Mouse.
yeah, so we are just about coming to an end here. It's almost 8 o'clock, at least where I am. If anyone does have any more questions, please do put them in the chat and we'll try to address them in these last couple of minutes. But thank you so much to Sam, Talia, Kevin, and Keith for jumping on this event and for sharing all of your amazing knowledge with all of us today. I really appreciate all of you.
Well, thank you, Mel. You did a great job.
Yeah, we appreciate you too, Mel, and it's an honor to be included here.
Agreed.
Thank you so much.
Mel.
Yay. Yeah, and thank you to everyone who joined us today. Yeah, this was a great event.
Yeah.
Very well done.
Yes.
Thank
Yeah.
Keith, I've had your products, of course. Talia, I'm very excited to try yours.
Yeah.
We'll have to get you some.
Ordering some. Yeah, absolutely.
And Sam, if ever I'm in Pennsylvania, I'll look you up and check out what the whole medical scene is over there.
We got you. There's no better guide than me, Keith.
Definitely. Good hands over there for sure.
Yeah. And I'll make one last plug for my book. I wrote the book on, the title is Brewing with Cannabis. It'll be available August 1st. But in there, I cover a lot of the history of cannabis, how to grow the plants, how to extract, how to make it water soluble or water compatible. And I even have a bunch of home brewed recipes. So now listeners who want to make non-alcoholic home brewed beer, I have recipes for that too.
Nice.
If they want to experiment with putting CBD in there or something, they can make that water compatible and put it into non-alcoholic beer. So it'll be available August 1st. If you go on Amazon and just type in Brewing with Cannabis, the book, the cover will come up and you'll see the cover. And but yeah, hopefully people can learn a lot from it.
Definitely looking forward to that book coming out. Yeah, CERIA Uninfused, Two Roots Uninfused, and Sweet Crude are all available at the Open Road online.
Thank
Well,
you for
everyone.
sharing our products.
Thanks, Mel.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
you
Thanks,
all.
Kevin. Thanks, Talia. Thanks, Sam.
Have a good
Happy
night.
belated 420.
Yeah,
We're still celebrating.
Yes.
it's
yeah.
422.
Earth Day, Earth Day.
So,
Yes,
it's
happy
okay,
Earth Day.
Yeah.
It's for all the
All
stoners
right.
who forgot on 420.
Yeah.
All right.
Bye,
Have a
everyone.
good evening.
Have a
Cheers.
good night.
Thank you.
Cheers.